Hello friends, this is one of the penultimate lectures on the drama program series that we've been holding for some time now, and today belongs to the great dramatist from England called Harold Pinter, and we'll be focusing on his play The Birthday Party, particularly in the second half. And Harold Pinter, you might have heard of him. He got the Nobel Prize of Literature in 2002 or 3. And I call him, as the title of the lecture today tells us, Harold Pinter, the Dramatist of Our Time. And our time is to be defined as the time that came up, that emerged in its form, in its specific form in the 1950s or so. And this is the post-Second World War time. And this time, has certain distinctions about it. And those distinctions are taken care of, are reflected by Harold Pinter in his dramatic writing. And since this writer is talking about the truth, the reality, the problems, the issues of this particular period, starting from, let's say, 1945-6 onwards, up to the time, when the writer lived, he talks specifically about this time, about its problems. It doesn't go into history. It goes into the present. And the present is taken seriously, comically, and tragically all the time. So I have this particular thing in mind, and I think that we should consider him as our own voice, the voice of the common masses, the voice of the intellectuals, the voice of the close observers of our reality. Let's be acquainted with Harold Pinter, the individual writer. He is a British playwright born in Britain. He's an actor. He acted in his own plays, and he must also have must have acted in certain other productions too. He was a screenwriter. The TV programs, the films, they require screenwriters to write a script, which is based on one or the other works of the present period or the past period, and it's a professional job, and he knows how to present pictures along with words, and he will indicate definitely the words that are truthful, the words that appeal in the context of the play, the film that he's working for. He's a theater director, once again a person of great communication and inspiration. Communication because he has to tell people what he expects of them. The actors, he can handle actors, actresses. He can handle child artists. He can handle also the other workers for the screen, like the cameraman and all. And he's a theater director. When it's a theater, then of course he can do acoustics on his own. He can tell people how to raise or bring down the voice. All these things. He's born in 1930. 1930 is the period when the First World War ended. Let's say 17 years ago, in 1930, and the other background of the war is building up. And within 9 years, the Second World War would begin. And this is a very problematic decade, so far as somebody being born in such a time is concerned. He would not understand as a child what is happening around him in the 1930s, but as late 40s come, and he knows that there is uncertainty, there is violence all around the European world in particular, and the whole world in general. So when the war begins, he's 9 years old. When the war ends, he's 15, 16 years old, and that's the time, that he must have felt disturbed by, stirred by. He would have thought about what was happening around him, and he would also seek the causes. And who knows, when he goes to the school, and whether he does well or doesn't do well, he moves around, and then, he forms his point of view. He is born where? And that is important. He is born, at a place which is Metropolitan Borough of Hackney in East London's working class Hackney district. London is a big town, is a big city, and it has different locations in it. And the eastern location of the London city, that has the working class living there. And the working class means the masses who work in factories, the masses who work in the market, the masses, who move around doing small household chores. The working class basically is the industrial working class, but working class has also, some kind of an association with conditions of poverty, even outside the factory. And this person is born there. One thing more, I'll tell you just in passing, that he comes from the Jewish family. And the Jews, have always borne the brunt of, class oppression, even religious oppression, and they always remain isolated. And maybe as a Jew, he also would have felt, that people were looking at him suspiciously, and they would not appreciate his qualities, and they would always, treat him with prejudice. So he is bearing all that as a child, as a young man, a writer in the making at that time, and these things would make him extra sensitive. He died at the age of 78 in 2008, and he died also in London, which means he has spent all his time in England, and particularly in the city surroundings. I will, for the purpose of today's discussion, mention 2 or 3 plays by him, but there are many more plays, 15 or so, and there are short plays. There are comments, there are interviews, and as I've already told you, that as a director, he has been associated with the production of plays as well as films. So, Birthday Party is one of his important plays. It is written in 1957 when Pinter would be 27 years. And imagine such a great play, such a powerful play, such a play about the critical conditions in which he grew up, and the things that he saw with his own eyes, with open eyes. And he is talking about the birthday party that might have happened according to him, maybe in his own mind, or maybe he could think of such a birthday party in the surroundings where he lived. So as a 27-year-old writer talking about something which is celebratory raises questions. And already I have told you a few things that are connected with oppression. And a person who is oppressed, a person who has been hunted down, let's say, by social prejudice, this person thinks of a birthday party in 1957, and he makes it into a play. And what role the birthday party will play in the drama that we'll discuss is something to be talked about a little later. The other is Caretaker. The third is Betrayal. And what do these particular titles of the plays suggest to us? So somebody is a caretaker. So, and the caretaker is not the owner of anything. The caretaker is a kind of a chowkidar. The caretaker is some kind of a protector, somebody who is watchful. And such a character being thought about by him is significant in the sense, that he's talking about somebody who may be the caretaker of someone else, and he has to, call that the owner of the estate, of the place of which he's a caretaker. He has to maintain the surroundings, the structures that they are supposed to protect and keep a watch on. So it's not an ordinary character. We generally, as writers, do not think about caretakers. We talk about the poor people on one side and the rich on the other, and we talk about girls, we talk about boys, we talk about lovers, we talk about marriage, we talk about the market. But who talks about the caretaker? So which means that there is somebody who is in the margins, inspires him to write on. And then there is a betrayal. What does betrayal suggest? Once again, you say one thing and do another. So which means that there is a kind of a rift in the mind of the character or the very idea of the minds of people who betray. And betraying means that you are not able to hold faith You assure somebody that you will do your job nicely, and you will be loyal to. I would be, if I work, I would be loyal to the master who giving salary to me. Or if I have to express my faith, then I'll express it openly. But inside my heart, I will do the opposite. That's called betrayal. So betrayal means a double kind of personality in a person, and the writer is talking about such a position, which means that he knows what is actually going on in the minds of specific individuals in the time when he begins to write his plays, the 1950s, and betrayal is going to be a theme. Homecoming also is connected very well with caretaker and betrayal, because somebody left home and finally came back. And there is a kind of experience, there is a kind of, all the time, there is a kind of journey that somebody took up, went away from the home, and finally thought of coming back. Which means that the idea of the sense of belonging to the place where one lived initially and then went away and finally came back. And the title of the play would suggest that the issue of belonging to a certain place, which is protected, which is a kind of a shelter, is important and is a point of concern for the writer. So I've given you a few ideas about the four plays that I mentioned, and this would also tell us about the concerns that the author has in his own mind. And if he has these concerns, then he must be, as I've suggested already, a very aware, a very conscious writer. I already told you he won the Nobel Prize. Now let me correct the date, the year that I mentioned. He got it in 2005. In fact, he was seriously ill at that time, and he would die, after 3 years of it. And I remember when the Nobel Prize was announced for him, and he could not attend it. This also I read in the newspapers then. He sent his written speech to be read there, where the Nobel Prize ceremony was happening. And that particular statement by him, it's the longest statement. I read it at that time in the newspapers, and later on it was published also elsewhere. So he was then, very concerned about the state of affairs, not merely in England, but in the whole world. And he was on the side of the poor people, the deprived, the ones who were oppressed. And for instance, he would be talking against Israel, and he would be talking in favor of the Palestinians. And as I told you, he's born in a Jewish family. But then the Jews who occupy this place of importance in Israel, they are handmaids in the hands of certain forces in the country, because of which this area of contention is still talked about, and it's a place which gives birth to what can be called unnecessary violence. So his plays uncover, I now quote a statement, his plays uncover the precipice under everyday prattle. What is the precipice? Precipice is the limit, is the last line beyond which there is a kind of a ditch. So are we sure when we move around that very soon we might be stepping into something which is which invites, which gives us, in fact, a kind of a blow. And he wants to uncover that precipice, so that you know that you are standing somewhere, and beyond which is a ditch. And under everyday prattle, so there is a precipice under everyday prattle. Prattle means the ordinary talk, nonsensical talk. So the talk goes on. Most of us, when we walk on the street or inside the locality where we live, and we merely prattle. We merely, say this thing and that thing. It may not, provide any sense at that time. But then, under the prattle, he says there is a precipice. Now, there is something that is to be considered in the case of a writer, that what we say may not mean anything on the surface. But under the surface, beneath the surface, what we say actually uncovers the problems that we walk on. So there is a prattle, but this prattle is hiding something very serious, and force entry into oppression's closed rooms. So I would not go in detail about this, but you can see that there are closed rooms, and these closed rooms are maintained by certain people in society who practice oppression. And the people are kept in these closed rooms. Maybe these closed rooms are the jails, the police stations, and the prattle is about something else. But then we know that certain forces are all the time working in order to push the ordinary people into the closed rooms. So if that is made a kind of concern, made a kind of an aim by the writer to make the viewers aware about the threats that are hidden behind the prattle, then of course the writer is playing a very important role in society. A part of the theatre of the absurd trend, the trend had scant regard for the accepted use of words, provocative and poetic. Now, what is the theatre of the absurd? We have had lectures on the theatre of the absurd, and the word became very important in the early 1950s and late 1940s, which meant that, after the Second World War, the writers didn't know how to defend the war or to explain it. Nobody can defend a war generally, but if it's a world war and people are taking sides and then changing their sides according to the prospects of success or failure, so yesterday's friends become today's enemies and vice versa. So in that case, what doesn't he believe in? Yesterday somebody was my friend and today he's my enemy, and yesterday that person was my enemy and today he's become my friend. So as an individual, as a writer, how do I find out whether things were better yesterday or are better today? And finally, I may lose faith in the very words spoken by people, because very soon people will change their opinion and they will start criticizing those things which earlier they upheld as right. So if language, is used in order to defend or oppose anything without any rhyme or reason, without any need, and on a daily basis, and one doesn't know whether what one says is right or wrong, then what's the point of talking about it? I raise a question and I want you to consider it, that if what you say, what I say, it doesn't prove any important point belonging to yesterday or today, then why should I speak? And what I speak, should appeal to others. But if it doesn't appeal to others and I keep on talking, then what finally results is absurdity, that I don't mean anything, that perhaps life does not offer anything meaningful, and therefore it should not be taken seriously. And that kind of a mood existed in the 1940s, late 1940s and early 1950s. And there's nothing meaningful that is in life. The friends, generally don't behave as friends. And if they say something that goes against the very stand that they might take tomorrow, or that they might have taken yesterday, then how do I call such a person a friend? And everybody says, "Oh, friend, come and talk to me." And somebody else, his enemy, will come tomorrow and will say the same thing. So finally, I would start reviewing the very idea of friendship, because absurdity then reigns supreme. People don't mean anything; they merely say for the sake of saying. And we'll be discussing the birthday party. If in the birthday party people come and wish you well, and they're at the same time cutting at your roots, then it means that there's no point in taking whatever wish they express seriously. So the trend had scant regard for the accepted use of words. This is the point I'm making. Words should mean something because that is the convention. But those words have lost their meaning, their sense, and people are merely creating noise. They are not using words in order to communicate anything meaningful. Then, I say that this person was provocative and poetic at the same time. So how can you be provocative and poetic at the same time? You must think about this particular phrase that I introduce you to. You provoke somebody, you excite somebody, you unnecessarily create a strong sensation in somebody by talking. That is called provocation. Somebody is quiet, and you maybe you can use a word of abuse, and the person becomes angry. And when he is angry, he is no more quiet. He starts talking. So he is in a way playing in your hands because you are provoking him. So this writer, in that sense, can be sometimes called provocative. But then his provocation is actually planned. He wants you to provoke, and provoke you why? Because people are at that point of time not able to sense anything good in life, and his job then is to provoke. So in fact, good writers sometimes make it a kind of tactic to provoke the audience. If you say something that is difficult but at the same time threatening, then you will open your eyes and you'll focus upon the very tone of the person who used those words. So in a way, the writer's job is to say things in a manner that you can be provoked to think. So he as a writer also is provocative. If somebody is provocative, can he be poetic? Poetic means expressing sentiments and emotions and sending a message of emotional worth. So can he be both? It's very difficult to believe that somebody can be provocative and somebody can be poetic. But then one should not raise this question theoretically. There are people who provoke and are poetic at the same time. And if you want to have an example of this, then read Harold Pinter's plays, because he provokes and at the same time he sends across an emotion that will make you, and that will make you calm, that will make you tranquil. So Pinter was, let's now use these words, esteemed for his inventiveness. So he will use simple words. Sometimes he will use half sentences. Sometimes he will repeat a particular sentence, and he will remain inventive all the time. So inventive means that he will always, create something new, and you will be struck by that novelty in his expression. And because every time he is doing something different, therefore you will say the person is not treading the accepted path, but is telling you something which will ultimately give you a sense of uncertainty, and you will start thinking about the surroundings where you live. Originality. He is not repeating anyone. He is not following anyone, any general kind of principle. For instance, if one talks of religion, then in religion he will be original. He will not talk about somebody else's religion. He will not talk about a preacher. He'll in fact criticize a preacher, and he'll be original in his ideas, presenting that kind of a preacher. Morality. He will talk about morality tongue in cheek. That is, he'll say it, but he will not mean it, and he'll say something new. If he says something new, and you start thinking about morality, about ethics, about the ordinary ideas that control your behavior, then you can say that he's saying something new, but in a manner that people will understand it later. So that is his originality, because he's saying something new. And finally, formal innovation. He must innovate also. He must always talk about new things. And he's in the process of learning new things, inventing new things. The first word was inventiveness, and inventiveness brings in innovation. In his dramatic practice, the Pinter pause conserves relying on unsaid things to convey characters' motivations or personalities. So just I'm using the word Pinter pause. What is Pinter pause? The pauses that Harold Pinter, uses in his plays. Now, you can speak a sentence. The character or an actor can speak a sentence, but then the actor becomes quiet, and for 2 or 3 seconds he does not say anything. What happens then? The audience is perplexed. The audience wants to know why this person stopped. And therefore, the audience will go back to the phrase where the person stopped. And then we'll start thinking, oh, this is what he meant. Perhaps he meant the opposite. Perhaps the actor forgot his line. Perhaps the actor became confused. Perhaps the actor wanted to say something, but then said something else. So all these questions are raised just because Harold Pinter is in the habit of using pauses to make the audience understand. So Pinter pause is the particular pause that Pinter uses, and you can learn it from him. Read his plays, watch his plays on the stage, and see how Pinter will suddenly make the character stop. And then, the character will start talking about something else. He will not pursue the argument that he began with in the previous part of his statement. And if that happens, then one can say that this is typical of Pinter. Other writers don't use it. People carry on with the message through the characters on and on. But so far as Pinter is concerned, he believes in pauses. And those pauses are the pauses that particularly belong to the style of Pinter. It is for this reason that it's called the Pinter pause. What's the purpose of it? It concerns relying on unsaid things. Are they unsaid things? Things that are generally said. They are generally mentioned. But certain things are not said, which means that they are there, but you don't say them. If you don't say them, then you can start asking, what is the happening he's referring to? And then oh, he didn't say it, but this is what he meant. That's the unsaid thing. If something is not said and you have been thinking about it, then you will become more aware of its presence. And therefore, the unsaid things become the points of interest in the dialogue spoken by a character or an actor on the stage. And characters' motivations or personalities. Why does a character say all this? What is his motive? Or what kind of a person is he? What personality does he have? These questions are connected with the Pinter pause. And then the Pinteresque. What is Pinteresque? The specific style of Pinter. Pinter, I'll be telling you later on also, but let me say in this context, Pinter is in the habit of repeating words. Pinter is in the habit of cutting short a sentence. Pinter is in the habit of giving us ideas which are unconnected with one another. And these are the habits of thought of Pinter. Pinter has a habit of saying things in a different manner. He doesn't talk like other people, other writers in England or in France, and he is saying things in such a manner that you can straight away say, oh, he's like Pinter, which means if somebody else is using the technique of unconnected words and sentences or language, that doesn't mean exactly what you thought it meant. And you start, sometimes laughing, sometimes you feel that, you don't understand, and at another time you say, oh, how wonderful. So he's able to take chances in all situations, and therefore one can say that this is the style of Pinter. So the style of Pinter is called Pinteresque. So this refers to an inconclusive end. The end doesn't occur. To a comedy of subtle menace and absurdity. Now just see the words. Comedy is supposed to make you laugh. Comedy is very open and is very direct, but here it is subtle. And subtle in the context of menace. It threatens. So these words, suggest that Pinter is using all these things as techniques, and therefore you have to take him seriously, not at one level, but at different levels. So what I've said in the meantime is that there is a kind of writing that Pinter invented in the 1950s, and that gave a new twist, a new turn to the English drama. And it raised questions, but in a manner that only Pinter could do it. Other writers, did not think that was the right thing. But then he would dazzle you, he would disturb you, he will make you uncertain, and then he will compel you to think. Thank you.